Cheers.
Cheers. Thanks for letting me in.
Welcome to Founders Raw.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
All right, Simon. So we're here at Tech Northwest here in Seattle, and just want to get a little bit of your background, your story, and just celebrate founders and entrepreneurship. So just a little background on what brought you here. Just a short summary of what brought you here.
Great. So I was an academic, and I thought I'd got my dream job when I had tenure at whatever, the age of 30 or something. And then I discovered actually that it wasn't that. That in fact, that there was, what I really cared about was making a difference. That if I had an awesome piece of technology or a great idea, that I really wanted to make it happen, right? And so that really meant startups. So my first startup, I started from the University of Cambridge in the UK. 98, moved it out to Silicon Valley. That bifurcated, and one half went great, the other half wiped out. Yeah, very spectacular.
And you're saying that was 98? That was right at the
wiped out in 2000. And we spent $50 million of money, right? I mean, this is a lot of money. Yeah. And then I went on to do ZenSource, which is a very successful company, sold Citrix, and now I'm doing another one, Bromium. So in all 4 companies, and I've kind of discovered that that's what I do. I do startups. Yeah. And for me, innovation and the spirit of innovation is fundamentally about what we do here. It's what we're good at. Yeah. And tech is at this amazing cusp of innovation now with cloud computing and mobile devices, where if you have the chops, you should be doing it. Yeah.
So kind of want to go back a little bit. You say that it's like this is what startups are what you do. Why do you think that is? Or is there a way to sum up how you have discovered that?
I think I have a certain impatience. That is, if you're in a large company, you get to act at huge scale, but relatively slowly. Yeah. Okay, and you get to be, less in control of the details, right? The beauty of small companies is that you get to do potentially world transforming things. You get to do them fast, and you get to do them at in a way which is appropriately aligned with some model of consumption, right? That is, if you look at big companies, they're only big because of legacy stuff, right? Yeah. But if you have a transformation in the way that people are consuming stuff, for example, mobile devices or whatever, right? The opportunity then is to get onto that new wave. And the only way to deliver innovation at that scale and that rate is through startup-style opportunities. And so if you want to act in an impatient way, and you have a big idea, you just got to get out and get on and do it, right? That doesn't mean you need to do it thoughtlessly. You have to do it thoughtfully. But to my mind, my impatience in terms of getting stuff done certainly aligns me well with startup.
And are you speaking of just like fast iteration, like testing things? Like what has worked in your experience in your past?
No, actually, everything I've done has served enterprises. Okay, so not one of the things everybody knows about Google things is staying beta forever, right? Yeah. No, if you serve the enterprise, you've got to do stuff that really works and people really pay you and so on. But the fundamental challenge that we face is that Moore's law. Just step it back to pure tech. Moore's law delivers technology still at a rate which is exponential. Yeah. Basically, the same is happening in other dimensions of tech, right? That's far faster than linear humans can deal with it. Okay? So what that tells you is that at any point in time, the incumbent skill set is useless because it's linear, right? That is, normal humans will learn new stuff at a linear rate, and basically all you want to do is retire them and get them out of the workforce, right?
Exactly.
Now, if you happen to be at a point when you have an innovative ability or an innovative idea, you can hop onto that Moore's law, vertical climb at the right point, and you are really well poised to take advantage of a profound change in technology.
And so what would you, someone that's looking at, they have an idea and kind of going with this Moore's law stuff, or this idea that they should jump on it. What do you think is the first, what's the first thing that you would tell them to do? The next step, I have an idea. What's the next step after that?
So to my mind, there are fundamental differences between consumer-style ideas and enterprise-style ideas, right? Notwithstanding those, you need, it's impossible for one person to create a company. I really believe that. So sometimes I meet entrepreneurs who who want to go and disrupt a business area, but they have no idea how to do it. They don't have the tech or whatever happens to be, right? Those things are very hard to do. That is, in general, if you find yourself in a position where you need to find a co-founder, in general, that's hard. Yeah. Because, so what you need to do is you need to network. And to my mind, actually, entrepreneurs are always, you always don't want to tell anybody else your idea. You're worried they might do it too. If that's the case, actually your idea isn't that great. Somebody else will have that idea.
You're right.
And you're probably not in a position where your idea is profound enough that it would really have some enormous effect, right? That isn't always the case. So in fact, what it really behooves you to do, in my mind, is you've got to go and find somebody whom you trust, who can actually modulate your ability to come up with cool new ideas, and talk through how and when to make it into a business, and what makes it a business, what makes it transformative, and how to get there.
So are you saying, like, just find as many technical individuals, if you're not technical, for instance, sit down, work through the idea, share it with them, try to dissect it as much.
It works both ways, by the way. You have amazing tech coming out of universities, and people have this amazing piece of technology which they believe in famously, and people can say, wow, that's a totally cool piece of tech, I'll invest in it. But ultimately, you've got to know how it will be consumed and what businesses run. So it works both ways. It's not just about tech. I think these two things go hand in hand. But you need to be able to think your way through, at least to some viable plan. The good thing about the startup world now is that the cost of innovation is dramatically lower than it used to be. Right?
Absolutely.
So you can go and use a cloud and you can build an app very, very cheaply.
And so, you've done a number of things. Going back to your first experience, compare it to maybe I think you said maybe you're on your fourth company, or you have done 4 companies. What changed between those 2 experiences? Maybe it was like you learned some things that what's the difference between those experiences?
Actually, so first of all, I think when you start your company, when you first start out, you have nothing by way of experience in terms of what it is like to be in a startup. And I think you have some experiences here. Actually, one analogy that I've worked with over the years in terms of startups is it's like surfing. Okay, you're in the waves, you've got a board. Okay, and your board is your idea. And one thing that you'll realize pretty quickly is you cannot control when the waves come. You have no ability, right? And when the wave comes, you got to get on the board, you got to surf, and there's reefs and everything else underneath there, right? And so you can't control timing. You're in very precarious situation at all times, and it goes up and down a lot, sometimes several times a day. You can say, oh, there was a great sales meeting, you walk out, go to the next one, and you get kicked out of the meeting because you're something, right? And so actually what I do is every day, or actually twice a day, I record a number between 1 and 10, just how I'm feeling, right? And almost,
is that personally or like the company?
Me, just me. Okay. Yeah. And it's just me and what I know about the company, right? And in general, because I think most entrepreneurs are kind of glass half full types, right? In fact, I don't think you can do it if you're glass. So, for me, generally in the morning, it's an 8 or a 9, right? I'm feeling pretty good, and I want to keep a bit of in reserve for the end of the day. Often something bad will happen, so I'll write down a 5 or a 4 or something, and then, then there's this battle to get it back up, right? And what you find as an entrepreneur is it's not about you. That is, as an entrepreneur, every day you go in and you get on your knees and you breathe life into this thing which would die without you. It's not about you. You could be feeling terrible. You could have just heard that you failed to raise money or whatever, but you've got a bunch of employees who are depending on you, or whatever it happens to be, and you've got to breathe confidence into them, and you've got to keep the thing moving forward. That's incredibly difficult to do. Very, very difficult. And I think for entrepreneurs, once you get to that stage when you're building a company, you have to have somebody else that you as the entrepreneur can lean on, because it is unbelievably brutal.
So you're saying that your first experience, you were just learning that. You didn't know that.
I didn't know any of that stuff. And I hired and fired my best friends, right?
And so how did you get through that first experience where everything's new, you're learning, you're like, what the hell's going on here? Like, how do you learn those experiences? How do you go through that?
So I concluded that you can't learn fast enough. So now if you approach me as a first-time entrepreneur, you said, I have this awesome idea, and you're a complete rookie, I would say even if it was the best idea since sliced bread, I'd say there's no way you can do it because the learning curve is too steep.
Yeah.
Okay. So fundamentally, I think that startups are built by people who know how to scale, which is why I would recommend to anybody, go and figure out, go find somebody who knows how to scale.
Yeah.
And for me, actually, learning how to scale came when I first worked at ZenSource, which was a rocket ship, with people who come through Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So people who'd been at Microsoft in the 90s and they were younger than me, but they had delivered software to billions of machines, okay? Yeah. So these people had done amazingly scalable things, and they knew how to move fast, and they didn't get worried about little details and so on, so just move fast. And so for me, that was a huge learning period in really just how to deal with the fact that as a business you have to scale.
Yeah.
And so I think advisors who can help you there are absolutely crucial. And what I've found actually along the way is that people who have succeeded are so enthusiastic about the process of entrepreneurship that in general they just want to help you.
Yeah, yeah. Right? And so is that what you're looking to do now, or are you more or less?
I love it. Yeah, I advise about, I don't know, 4 or 5 companies just because I love it. Mm-hmm. Right.
And what are you finding, if you could, it's hard to boil down, but maybe 1 or 2 things that you're finding that it's almost common that these founders are experiencing, and then how do you coach them through it? Is there 1 or 2 things that you're seeing that is pretty common?
In general, so again, it comes down to what kind of business you're in.
Yeah.
In the consumer style businesses or in the PaaS world, the cloud world, a lot of this notion of go and get users, go and get customers, make it free, get adoption, and figure out the business model later.
Yeah.
And it works kind of for a while, but you have to figure it out. I mean, there just has to be a plan, no matter how subtle, to actually winning a real business, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can't convince yourself in your blackest moment that there is a real serious business there, right, then you need to get out.
Fully agree. What do you think is because it's hard. Like, I mean, sometimes founders will have an idea where they're like, the business model almost comes first, right? Or they have this, like, they're innovating around a business model as opposed to a technology.
Yeah, typically those founders are people who've done an MBA.
They understand the economics and stuff.
Right.
But if it's not, what do you think are the maybe some ways that a founder could actually look at?
So to my mind, the most important thing is that the founding idea is not what makes the business. And that's very hard for entrepreneurs to get their heads around, right? And particularly for technologists, because technologists they fall in love with their tech, right? And, tech is, if anything, if you're going to build a big business, tech is maybe 2% of it, right? Mm-hmm. And so the most important thing is to have the ability to throw away everything that you've thought of, right?
Yep.
And to move fast and move where the customer is telling you to go. Yeah. Move with the customer, and the customer is always somebody who's got money in their pocket, right? It's not necessarily a free user or whatever it happens to be. So you have to be pretty aggressive in terms of throwing away your own stuff, and that can be hard for a lot of people.
Did you experience that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Coolest tech on the planet, the foundational patent in software-defined networking, which is really a big deal now.
Yeah.
But back then, could you get someone like Cisco to go down? It just wasn't going to happen.
So just to tap into that experience a little bit, what was that experience? What was the idea? And then you learned that it wasn't working. You needed to pivot. And then what did you go towards that actually worked?
Okay. So we had a foundational patent in software-defined networking, which is a big deal for cloud environments today. Mm-hmm. This is as a result of academic research. So 10 years too early, classically. And so the problem was that we went off and we built this cool stuff, but in general, it was too early for the market to adopt it, right? That is, we were years ahead of our time. We have found a couple of niche applications with a couple of vendors and so on. And at the end of the day, that door got shut towards us because the technology was too threatening and so on. And we ended up getting forced to go and use, legacy management style interfaces to control networks, which is a horrible business, and you don't want to end up there. And so, what was the fundamental problem was we had the coolest tech since sliced bread. And because you have the coolest tech, you believe that this tech will transform the world. And yes, it did, but only 15 years later, right?
Yeah.
So, being realistic in terms of what the market is absolutely fundamental. And you've got to know that the market means that somebody needs to buy the thing.
And that's what I want to tap into is I see a lot of startups or a lot of companies that do have, they think it's the best tech since sliced bread, but if the market isn't buying it or someone's not, biting on it, you can't force it down their throat. You literally cannot move forward. So what's the change in mindset that a team goes through that identifies, wait, it's not here, it's here, right? Like, I think that's the real secret sauce, is to figure out, we were going this direction, but the market is actually telling us this. We need to build for that.
Yes. That is the fundamental requirement of an entrepreneur, which is
like agility and flexibility within.
Yeah, and an ability to lead a team through incredible change, because you can have just built the most beautiful thing on the planet, but if nobody wants to buy it, you've got to chuck it out and build something else.
Yeah.
And that demoralizes a team, and it requires great leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so entrepreneurs who have the ability to continually consume their own stuff, throw it away, and rebuild.
Yeah.
Werner, who's the CTO at Amazon, has this wonderful way of saying that what they've done at AWS is they started out with like a Piper and had to rebuild it and build a Boeing without downing the service ever, right?
Yeah.
They had to build all the stuff, throw away everything that they had built, and that's such a basic requirement. And I know that you're in it for the long haul.
Yeah.
It's incredibly difficult. So entrepreneurship to me is really about the leadership ability to get others to believe in the vision of where you're going,
mm-hmm.
which can be tech independent or current product independent,
yeah.
right? It's the ability to take that notion of what you can do to disrupt a market, to convince investors, to convince employees, to convince customers that you're going to do this. And remember, as an entrepreneur, you're always selling to the leading edge.
Yes.
Right? You're selling to the early adopter. And beyond that, there's another whole set of problems in terms of building a scalable business.
Mm-hmm.
That's you get normal human skill sets in for that. People who've done it before.
You just mentioned investors. I love to ask all of our guests and what they think of raising money, and you're advising certain startups right now. What are your thoughts on bootstrapping versus raising money? There's really no right answer, but what's the nuances around that? Because it's difficult.
It is difficult. So the investment market has changed dramatically just in the last few years.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that you can say for sure is that there are enough savvy angel folk around who've done it before, who can possibly help you bootstrap, and and avoid that whole notion of going to get money from the VC world, right? Now, swings and roundabouts. It's important not to get too wound up about money. That is, if the idea is big enough, then actually how you organize the cap table on day one is relatively unimportant by comparison with the endpoint, right?
Yep.
And so agility and ability to move faster with more money is probably better. And owning, 15 or 16% of your company, who cares, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so to my mind, the key thing is to find investors or advisors who will really help you transform the way you build a business. They can come with money or without, but number one is to get the advice, right?
Yeah.
Now, most of the big VC firms will put in seed level funding nowadays because they've found that they're competing with the angels.
Exactly, yeah.
To my mind, it's really about a personal match. You need to find somebody who will help you guide the growth of your business. The problem with the VC folks is that they don't have the capacity to do with lots and lots of itsy-bitsy investments. And so they go through this winnowing, which is when you come up for air and you want real money, they can choose not to do it.
Yeah, which is not a good situation for a startup to be in, because it does signal to other investors, it's like, well, why aren't they putting money in? Not to say it's the end of the world, but I think that's a caution. If you're taking seed money from a VC firm, if they don't follow on, is that a challenge? Or
it absolutely is. In fact, what you need to know is this: the big VC firms have got enough money that they're totally okay to burn a few $100,000 to destroy something that they don't want to exist. Okay?
You're right.
And I have seen that happen.
Wow. Yeah.
It's not common, but they do it.
It happens.
Because they know they have a competitive play that they'd rather have, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So everybody's rational. To my mind, it's also absolutely wrong to get too in love with your angels. Okay? Angel investors are not sophisticated. So never for example, never value your company until you get real money.
And are you suggesting there's a convertible note type of?
Yeah, just give them a discount on it, or whatever it happens to be. But or just pay them interest, whatever it happens to be. But don't ever treat an angel like a VC. Don't let an angel start to get control. Right? They're angels, they're advisors. Yeah. It's your business.
Yes.
And they don't have any privacy at the table. They never get to impose any constraints on how you will manage the cap table thereafter. Yeah. Right? Because the first thing that real money wants to do, which is VC money, is cram those guys down. And if there's any opportunity to do it, they will. Right? Because they're just they have to. And so you want absolutely clean things there. Right? Yeah. And you don't want too many of them. Because if they have any rights, they start to pester you and they get in your face and so on. As an entrepreneur, too many angel investors is too much bandwidth talking to too many people.
Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts on, I'm seeing, and it's not as much of a trend now, but like the party rounds where, you're doing a seed round and there's 15 or 20 angel investors in that round. I would assume that that's got to be slightly challenging.
Yes.
Yeah, would you, suggest going a different direction than
that?
I'd
force them all into an LLC. That's what I do, and I'd say you get one representative.
Yeah.
Done.
And is that one representative on the cap table? Or?
Oh, I would, actually, if you do the LLC thing, the LLC can invest.
Okay.
And then they can divide the money later, right? Yeah. But then you don't want to be dealt with by all these. You want to pick the people that you want to talk to, right?
Yep.
And it could be any of them, but it also should be relatively few. But you don't want bazillions of people. As an entrepreneur, you don't want lots and lots of people to spend all your time with.
So what are your thoughts on raising money or building a product first? And I guess a better way to ask that is, do you suggest going out and raising money with essentially a prototype or a PowerPoint, or do you suggest a company, and maybe we're talking about an enterprise here, going out and actually getting customers, having launched the product, they have revenue coming in, and then they go out and try to raise a seed round?
To my mind, when you raise, you could spend forever building a thing, right, with relatively low resources. The problem is it's all about timing the product to the market, okay? And so if the market is here now, you need to be in the market, so you need the money. Yeah. Okay. Whereas if the market isn't here, and this is why this rational conversation about what is this thing, who would buy it tomorrow if you had it, right? That's so important because it helps you gauge when you need the money and when you need to time your market entry. So to my mind, when you need money is all about that. Yeah. You can afford to take a long time to build something if you don't have to enter the market right now, or if you have massive defensible technology base. In general, in tech, things move fast.
Yes.
And there is very little incentive to preserve equity in the cap table versus getting money and going faster, because there are very few existence proofs of people who made it that much better by doing so. Yeah. Okay. And in fact, probably there are lots of counterexamples where people were overly controlling of the cap table and didn't get the funds to go faster. So if it is a transformational idea, you will be able to convince somebody with decent pockets to put some real money in it, at which point you can get more humans to go and help you build a business. So in general, I'm not in favor of being overly conservative in terms of early stage growth. I'd far rather have a much more viable platform to go and deliver the thing.
And so are you saying, I guess to maybe dice it a little more, are you suggesting it's really speed to market based on the timing of the market? It's like time is not on your side. Go if the market is telling you to go get it, you go get it.
If timing is so, just say Uber didn't exist and you suddenly came up with the idea called Uber. It's pretty clear that there are no defensible barriers to the business based on proprietary anything.
Yes.
You've got to go do it, right?
Yeah.
Because anybody else could have that idea tomorrow, right? Standing in the line waiting for a taxi. Yeah. Okay. So it really depends on the idea and the technology and what the business can be. By the way, if you wanted to build an Uber, you would want hundreds of millions of dollars to fight out all competitors.
Yeah.
Which is kind of what they're doing, right?
That's exactly what they're doing.
So you find, those kinds of businesses have to build these big war chests because they have to obliterate all competition. Say you came up with the coolest thing, in some cool optical storage blah thing, it could be that the technology is very early and you have this heavy incumbency of people who buy traditional storage stuff. So there might not be that same urgency in terms of getting something to market. Nonetheless, you're competing with industrial research and so on. To my mind, being really frank with yourself and your co-founders on day one as to the rate at which you need to do this is absolutely crucial. and that will then clue you in as to how you go about getting money.
Yeah.
To my mind, in general, having more smarter people around a problem sooner is always a better thing. That is, it massively increases your probability of a successful outcome versus you stewing on something, or you and your co-founder stewing on something forever and possibly getting it wrong because you didn't talk to the other guy, right?
Yeah.
So to my mind, I'd rather have more brains around the table than less.
Which usually takes capital. It requires at least some sort of investment. Obviously not what was required 10 or 15 years ago, but certainly enough to get enough.
Actually, I mean, you look at the big consumer plays, huge amounts of money, right?
Yeah.
And shocking, right? $150 million to Airbnb. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
And increasingly, enterprise market, the deal sizes are going up and the valuations are going up too. So, that, by the way, is partly driven by the fact that the VCs have got way too much money, right?
And that's just to do something with it, right?
Yes. Yeah. So there's a huge amount of money in the venture world, and that has led to generally to inflation and how that ends up, we have yet to see.
We'll see. All right. Well, we're gonna close it up here. I appreciate it.
Thanks for the beer.
Cheers.